Good morning.
Good morning.
I continue to talk on this text, Opening the Hand of Thought, page 97, if you have this text, or if we want to check later. This is the beginning of the new section. Now Okumura Roshi started to talk about his Zazen practice. Until here he talks about the modern civilization and the problem of modern civilization. Now he started to talk about our Zazen practice. And he talks about our Zazen practice based on the Buddhist teaching of the title of this section is Interdependence and Middle Way. So, interdependence. And middle way, according to him, is essential point in Buddhist teaching, and at least when we understand the nature of our practice, we need to understand what is interdependence and what is middle way. And last week I talked about the teaching of interdependence and middle way in the early Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism, and I said there are some differences between early Buddhist teaching and Mahayana Buddhist teaching about interdependence and middle way. In the early Buddhism, we don't call interdependence, we call dependence or dependent origination. That means when A causes B, B is dependent on A. So this is cause and this is result. So direction is one direction. But in the case of interdependence, A and B interdependent each other. That is a difference, and this is the teaching of interdependence in Mahayana, at least from the Nagarjuna. And middle way in the original teaching of Shakyamuni is middle way between the way of life of self-indulgence, in which we pursue the pleasure or satisfaction of our desire, and another extreme is self-mortification. That means after he left, Shakyamuni left his father's palace, he practiced very severe ascetic practice, and that was called self-mortification. These two Shakyamuni found are not meaningful, so he found the middle way, and this middle way, kind of a healthy way of life, is called the Eightfold Noble Path. So middle way means middle way between self-indulgence and self-mortification. But in the case of Nagarjuna, this middle way is between U and Mu. U and Mu means being and non-being. And when we study Nagarjuna's teaching, the most important text written by Nagarjuna is Madhyamika Karika. Madhyamika Karika is a collection of verses, and Nagarjuna discussed about interdependence and middle way. Madhyamika Karika means the thesis of Madhyamika means middle, and his school is called Madhyamika. That means the school that discuss the middle. And in this case, this middle does not mean the middle between self-mortification and self-indulgence. This is middle way of everything. Everything means whatever extreme we create in our mind, like U and Mu. U is being or existence, and Mu is non-being. And he discussed about U and Mu, he means Nagarjuna, in one section of Madhyamika Karika. And what Okumura Roshi quote here in this page, the last paragraph of page 97. Let me read what he quote, then I talks about the meaning of this discussion. Okumura Roshi quote from the Agama or Nikaya, that is the considered record of what Buddha taught. In Pali tradition, it's called Nikaya, and in Chinese tradition, it's called Agama. They are the different names of two same kind of collection of Buddhist teachings. What Okumura Roshi quote is the early scriptures known as the Agamas or the Nikaya say, truly seeing the aggregation of the world. Aggregation is a collection, means getting together. The view of non-existence does not arise. Non-existence is Mu. Truly seeing the non-substantiality of the world, the view of existence, that is U, does not arise. The view that all things exist is one extreme, and the view that nothing exists is the other extreme. Being apart from these two extremes, the Tathagata teaches the Dharma of the middle way. So middle way is between these two extremes, U and Mu. Because this exists, that exists. Because this arises, that arises. So this and that are interdependent. Because this exists, that exists. And because that exists, this exists. That is the teaching of interdependence origination according to this quote. So instead of Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika, he quote this Agama or Nikaya. He means Okumura Roshi, because when he quote Nagarjuna, it becomes very, very difficult discussion, very difficult philosophical discussion. Anyway, I found the original sutta in Pali Nikaya, what Okumura Roshi quote. And I don't think I have time to talk about this sutta. Actually, this quote appears in two suttas, not only one. The first one is this is Samyutta Nikaya. Section 12 and part 15. The name of this sutta is Kachayana. Kachanagotta. Kaccanagotta is a person's name. This person, whose name was Kaccanagotta, asked Buddha. And his question was, what is the right view? That is one of the first of the Eightfold Noble Paths. What is the right view? And in his teaching, Buddha said what Okumura Roshi quote. And the same sutta appeared in another different sutta. That the name of this sutta is 122290. The name of the sutta is Channa. Channa is also a person's name, and in this case, probably this sutta is about after Shakyamuni's death. Channa had some question, and he asked other elders. The answers of all those elders did not satisfy his question. So he visited Ananda. Ananda was one of Buddha's disciples who was the personal attendant of Shakyamuni, and he memorized all of Buddha's teachings. So Channa asked his question to Ananda. Then Ananda taught or spoke what Buddha taught in the sutta of Kaccanagotta. So it's kind of interesting. Same sutta named Kaccanagotta is quoted by Ananda. So this second sutta is not what Buddha taught. This is a conversation between Ananda and Channa. So Nikaya is not 100% of what Buddha taught or Buddha's discourse, but in this case, Channa and Ananda had a conversation. Anyway, I talk about these two suttas next time, because when we read Okumura Roshi's writings, he always try not to use the Buddhist technical terms and difficult philosophy. He always avoid a difficult philosophical question or discussion or argument. That's why I think Okumura Roshi didn't quote Nagarjuna, but quote Agama. But I'm sure he found this quote when he studied Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika, because these short suttas in Nikaya is often mentioned in Japanese by Japanese scholars when they discussed about the source or origin of Nagarjuna's teaching. So I'd like to talk what Nagarjuna is saying about U and Mu, and that came from Buddha's teaching from Nikaya, and that is what is mentioned by Nagarjuna. So this is important to to understand the connection between what Buddha taught in Nikaya or Agama and what Nagarjuna wrote as a Mahayana teaching. And this appeared in chapter 15 of Madhyamika Karika. This is a translation of Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika. And the title of this chapter 15 is, this is a translation from Sanskrit. The title of this section is Examination of Self-Nature. self-nature. Self-nature is svabhava in Sanskrit, and sva means a self, and bhava means being. So this word svabhava is translated as self-nature or self-being or self-existence. That means something which doesn't change. The idea is there is something, things are changing depending upon causes and conditions. But the idea of self-nature is there is something which doesn't change. And this something which doesn't change goes through the process of changes. And Nagarjuna negate both being of self-nature and non-being of self-nature. That is the point of this discussion. So it's important to understand self-nature doesn't change, it's permanent. That means it can exist without relation with others. It's not created by something else. And this section is not too long, so I can just read. And I think you are very intellectual people, so I think we understand this kind of discussion. This kind of, I think, Nagarjuna discussion is very logical. It's different from Dogen. Dogen is more poetic. So it's really difficult to follow Dogen's writings using our intellection. But what Nagarjuna is writing is to negate the validity of logics using logical discussion. So Nagarjuna is more, I think, easier than Dogen to intellectually understanding. Anyway, he says, the rise of self-nature by relational and causal conditions. Relational and causal condition means interdependence. Things appear because of the changing or influence of others. Is not justifiable. If it's alive, this self-nature arises because of the relation from others, then that cannot be self-nature, because it's not impermanent, because it's not permanent. For such a self-nature will have a character of being made or manipulated. So something which changes because of the influence or relation with others, then that is not self-nature. How is it possible, second verse, how is it possible for the self-nature to take on the character of being made? So this self-nature is not something which is made by something else. So it should exist on its own, as its own being, without relation with others. For indeed, the self-nature refers to something which cannot be made. It's not arise and perish. It's always there without changing. And has no mutual correspondence with something else. That means relation with others. This self-nature can exist without relation with others. And verse 3, where self-nature is non-existent, where self-nature is non-existence is mu. If there's no such self-nature, how could there be unextended nature? extended nature I don't really understand, but in Chinese translation this is translated as other nature, 多少. Interdependence origination means two things interdependent to each other, and this has a self nature, and this is also have self nature. If we take this self nature, then this is this one's self nature. Then other one's self nature is called other nature. So they have both their own self nature. So where self nature is non-existence, how could there be an extended nature or other nature? For indeed, a self nature which has the nature of being extended, means others, will be called unextended nature, other nature. So other nature is this one's self nature. So if this is the Shōhaku, any one of you, I have my self nature and you have your own self nature. But if there's no such self nature, there's no such self nature for others also. And verse 4, again, separated from the self nature and other nature, how could existence be? If there's no self nature of the self and others, how can anything exist? For indeed, existence establishes itself in virtue of either self nature nor other nature. That means if these two are interdependent to each other, because of this can exist, because of this that can exist. In that case, if there's both has self nature, it cannot be interdependent, because self nature can be independent, can be or should be independent, and doesn't change. Then how these two things can relate and influence each other and transform each other? There's no such possibility. And verse 5, if existence does not come to be, does not establish itself, then certainly non-existence, that is mu, non-existence does not also. That means if u is not there, mu cannot be there, because mu or non-being is non-being of u. If there's something being does not exist, the lack of being does not exist neither. I think it's very logical. For indeed, people speak of existence in its varying nature, varying V-A-R-Y, varying nature as non-existence. So when we are thinking about existence and non-existence, we, within our experiences, when we see something arise, something appear, we think this is existence. And when this existence continues to exist for certain period of time, within the process, arising, staying, changing, and perishing, then it becomes mu. So this part is u, and this part is mu. Without this change, we cannot discuss about u and mu. But self-nature cannot have such change, because it is permanent. It doesn't change. how can something which doesn't change can change, is Nagarjuna's discussion. Those we see, things we see, that is, we try to understand the concept of self-nature, or other nature, or existence, or non-existence, do not perceive the real truth in the Buddha's teaching. When we think of existence or not existence of self-nature, then we cannot see the true reality of interdependence. That is what the Buddha taught. So what he's saying is it's not valid to try to see the reality or truth of interdependence origination using this concept of wu and mu, or existence and not existence of self-nature. Both doesn't work. So as far as we are thinking about self-nature, whether it's wu or mu, we cannot see the truth. And verse 7, this is where this Kaccayana Sutta is mentioned. According to the instructions to Kaccayana. Kaccayana is a Sanskrit way of reading this Kaccana. Gotta means the person from certain family or clan. So this is the same person. According to the instructions to Kaccayana, the two views of the world in terms of being or wu and non-being or mu were criticized by the Buddha for similar admitting to bifurcation, the bifurki, making into dual, two, bifurcation of entities into existence and non-existence. So what Nagarjuna is saying is wu and mu are simply a concept. When we try to see and grasp the reality which is always arising, changing and perishing, wu and neither wu or mu doesn't work. We cannot grasp clearly, understand and see the reality of these things are changing, depending, interdepending with each other. This is where this Buddha's teaching to Kaccayana is mentioned. So this is a connection between Nagarjuna and Nikaya. And verse 8, if existence wu of self-nature, if existence is in virtue of a primal nature is true nature. If existence is in virtue of a primal nature, then its non-existence does not follow, because existence is primal nature. It cannot become mu or non-existence. Otherwise, wu is not self-nature. For indeed, our varying character, changing character of a primal nature is not possible at all. Primal nature or true nature means nature which doesn't change. If primal nature does not exist, if this nature does not exist, that is mu, what will possess the varying or changing character? What that means, what is changing? When I say I often said when I was born, I was a tiny baby. Since then, for 66 years, I have been changing. But I think, or I would say, when 66 years ago, the baby was me. And I was a teenager, I was a young adult, I was middle-aged person, now I'm aged person. I say I was a baby 66 years ago, and I'm still me. So this I does not change. If we don't say if I cannot say I was a baby some years ago, then I cannot use any language. If this I, which doesn't change, or at least we cannot use this word I or concept of I, which doesn't change, we can't even explain the change. I was not, aged person 66 years ago, but I was a baby. This I is the same I, but a baby or a aged person are different, and there is a process of changing. So this I, which doesn't change, goes through the process of change. That is how our mind means our logical or rational way of thinking works. But if we think that is really true, and there's no such thing called I, which doesn't change, really exist as a self-nature, then we are mistaken. So basically what he's talking about the nature of our thinking. Our thinking is not reality itself. That is my understanding of Nagarjuna's discussion. Anyway, if primary nature, self-nature, does not exist, what will possess the changing character? There must be something that has the changing character. If, on the other hand, primary nature does exist, what then will possess the varying or changing nature? So both doesn't work. And verse 10, existence is the grasping of permanency. Existence is a grasping of permanency, permanent characteristics, and non-existence, the perception of disruption. As these functions are not strictly possible, the wise should not rely upon the concept of existence and non-existence. So we should not think or try to understand about the things happening using the concept of U and Mu. And what he's talking, permanency and disruption, is a basic problem about this discussion. Permanency means, and I think Nagarjuna used self-nature to make the discussion more general. But in the case of human beings, this self-nature is called Atman. That something doesn't change. And the idea of Atman is essential nature, and which doesn't change, and which is undefiled. But somehow within our life, Atman is imprisoned with these 5 skandhas. And these 5 skandhas is a cause of problem. So the idea of practice, spiritual practice before Shakyamuni was, how can we release the Atman from the prison of 5 skandhas? And one of the methods Shakyamuni practiced was meditation. By meditating, we purify ourselves, then this Atman can be released from suffering. But it didn't work to him. So what he did next was the ascetic practice that is called self-mortification, later by Buddha himself. That is, the problem is these 5 skandhas. So the method or meaning of ascetic practice, what Shakyamuni did, was weaken the power of 5 skandhas. Then Atman can be free from 5 skandhas. Then it can be released from samsara. But Shakyamuni found it didn't work neither. That is the middle way between self-mortification and self-indulgence. And if we think this Atman as a self-nature is really existing, then we can understand that this Atman, after these 5 skandhas dispersed, means when we die, this Atman will get next another 5 skandhas, and that is called rebirth. So in this analogy, Atman is like an owner and operator of these 5 skandhas, like an owner and operator of a car. And when car is broken, the operator leaves the car and buy a new car. That is the basic idea of Atman and reverse within samsara, transmigration within samsara. And another extreme, this is according to Nagarjuna and also Buddha, this is one extreme idea. And another extreme is move of self-nature. That means there's no such owner. So when these 5 skandhas dispersed, nothing left. So this is, when we die, nothing continues. According to Buddha and also Nagarjuna, that is another extreme. So we should avoid both. That means there's a continuation, but there's no such self-nature. Why continuation is possible without fixed self-nature? That is the question. And that is the purpose of this discussion, Wu and Mu. Whether if we don't have Atman, what continues? Not only life after life, but even moment by moment, or in my lifetime since I was a baby until I become a 66-year-old person. Since my body has been always changing, and my mind has been also always changing. What I thought when I was 20 and what I'm thinking now is very different. And what I liked when I was young and what I like now is very different. So 5 skandhas are always changing. Then what is this that doesn't change? What is this? If there's no such things that doesn't change, we cannot explain or understanding the continuation. And yet if there is something which doesn't change, then why we are changing? That is, both doesn't work. So what Buddha and Nagarjuna are trying to say is both are extreme. So we should see the reality without using this kind of concept. And that is what Nagarjuna says in the very beginning of this writing, when he, as an introduction of this writing, he says he offer this writing, his effort to write this effort to the Buddha, and he praised what Buddha taught. In that very first part of Majjhimika Karika, Nagarjuna said, I pay homage to the free awakened one, the supreme teacher who has taught. So this is Nagarjuna's understanding of what Buddha taught, who has taught the doctrine of relational origination. Relational origination is interdependence origination, same thing. And the blissful cessation of all phenomenal thought construction. This all phenomenal thought construction in Japanese is keiron. Ron is argument, and the K means like a praying. Praying means like a children prays. So keiron means the discussion or argument without no connection with the reality. That is a fiction. So all of the thinking using u or mu or self-nature, there is or there is not such self-nature, are all fiction. It's not reality itself. That means this kind of discussion doesn't make any sense. That's why he continues, therein, in this Buddha's teaching, every event is marked by non-origination, means arising, and no extinction, perishing, non-destruction, non-permanence, non-identity, non-differentiation, non-coming, coming into being, and non-going out of being. So these pairs are all, according to Nagarjuna, extremes. So we should avoid both sides. And that is what middle way means in the case of Nagarjuna. And this is really important teaching of Buddhism. That means to really see the truth or reality of our life. We cannot use the thinking, conceptual, discriminating way of thinking. It doesn't work. So in order to really see the reality, we should let go of thinking. Let go of thinking that is what I think what we are doing in our Zazen. So there are two sides. That is, our thinking is a kind of distorted copy of the reality. And the reality is beyond our thinking. So I think. I think the relation between these two, the reality beyond thinking or before thinking, and my understanding of what the reality is, my understanding or my explanation is something like the earth and the atlas of the earth. Atlas is a kind of a very incomplete copy of the earth, because earth, this planet, has 3 dimensions, and the atlas or map has only 2 dimensions. Then we try to make a copy of something which has 3 dimensions into 2 dimensions, something distorted. There are many various ways of making that world atlas, but depending upon how the atlas is made, there are different distortions. In certain world atlas, the Greenland is larger than United States, or the direction can be different, or shape is different, or the side is different. And our thinking is the same thing, I think. It's a copy of the reality, but it's distorted, because we have self-centeredness. We cannot see this world from outside. We have to see this world from inside. We are born within this world and live and die within this world. In order to live in this world, we need to take a position. That means within this world, we are born as a part of this internet network of interdependence origination. And we always see the world from inside. Because we are inside, we need to take a position. That means viewpoint. And depending upon where we are, the view is really different. Where we are or where we are from. Because I was born in Japan and grown up and educated in Japan. My view is Japanese, and because I became a Buddhist, so my view is Japanese, limited as Japanese Buddhist view. I cannot see this entirety of network from outside as an object. So whatever way of seeing, something distorted. We study geography in Japan using the atlas made in Japan. And in the world atlas made in Japan, Japan is always the center, always the center of the world. And Japan is a tiny country. We cannot tell which is the center of the world. So in Japanese world atlas, Japan is always colored with red to show this is the center of the world. And that is my picture of the world, input when I was young. And once that kind of picture is input in our mind, it's really difficult to become free from that image. So when I went to New England, I felt like I was in the edge of the world. If Japan is the center of the world, New England is the right side edge of the world. And another edge is England. England and New England is the edge of my image of world atlas. So when I was in Massachusetts, I felt the center of the world is in the west. But one time I visited a family, and their children go to the school. And when I entered their room, I saw the world atlas made in America. And it's different. I was shocked. So as a reality, wherever we are in the center of the world. Therefore, my atlas from this point and someone else's atlas from that point might be very different. That's how our thinking is used as a distorted copy of the reality. So when we think, the way I see and I think is absolutely and always true. Whatever thinking or opinion or view which is against or different from mine is wrong or bad. That is how we ordinarily think. But that is a delusion. So we need to understand how this atlas or picture of world or our view is made by our karmic conditions. To understand that thinking is not reality, I think is the first point to study the reality. And we become even a little bit flexible. That from my point of view, from my position, this world looks like this, but from the point of other people, it might be very different. To understand this possibility of this difference, and both are not absolutely true or absolutely bad, then we can start to conversations to talk about each other's view, and we understand the difference, and we understand how these differences are made. Then we can live more harmonious way with other people from different culture or country or religious or spiritual tradition. So I think what Nagarjuna and also Buddha and Okumura Roshi is talking about is to see our view is not absolutely right. That is my understanding. Anyway, of what Nagarjuna is discussing. So what both Nagarjuna and Buddha try to do is to, to create and offer certain absolutely correct view. But what they taught is there's no such absolutely correct view. Well, it's already 11:10. So that is my understanding of what is Nagarjuna's discussion. So next time I'm going to talk about what Buddha taught in Nikaya. But next time means in September. This is the last Sunday of July. And in August, we don't have Sunday morning Dharma talk. And from Tuesday, the day after tomorrow, I'm going to Europe. And coming back on August 19th. And we don't, in August, we don't have Sunday Dharma talk, and instead we sit 2 periods from 9 to 11. And also in the early morning, from Monday to Friday, we have 2 periods of zazen, that's all. We don't have morning service. And we don't have any evening activities. So we slow down because people go everywhere. And I go somewhere. So please enjoy your summer and come back and see again in September. Well, any question or comments?
I have a question.
Please.
It's a terrible question. I'm sorry for this question. So, are there any comments on sort of politics? if nothing is said, how do we have a city? If there's no one idea that's right, then
I think that's the principle of democracy, right?
Well,
There's no absolutely right idea. That's why we need to discuss and exchange the opinions.
Yeah, wow, that's a good answer.
So Buddha and Nagarjuna is negating also there's nothing. There's no absolutely right or wrong, but they also negate there's nothing. There's something, but we cannot grasp what is really right or always right or correct.
And was this ever written about, or did Buddha ever talk about how to come together as a community? Well, some of that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Please.
I need to go back 2 lectures, and I need to get the middle lecture and then this one.
Mm-hmm.
2 lectures ago, you made a distinction between will and choice.
Will and choice.
And that will was if I understood it correctly, which as you know sometimes I don't, but will would be an act of creation, which in the last lecture would be coming out of the true self, or the Atman, if that exists. Choice would be the karmic conditioned self that the Atman encounters, making distinctions between conditioned reality, which becomes the extended reality. If you've got an extended reality, then that reality is distorted because it is a conditioned reality based upon a mental attitude growing out of the true self. Then you talked about the true self, the karmic self settling on the true self in the lecture before this one. And the question I had at that time, which now seems incredibly oversimplistic, was that the truth, as the karmic self settles on the true self, what you're really doing is getting rid of the 3 poisons, and trying therefore to have a process of unconditioning and undoing the extended self. And that's the undoing of the thought, the letting go of the hand of thought. That would be getting rid of because that's the environmental perspective where you take an atlas from Japan and an atlas from the United States, and you've got that wobble that just does not reflect reality, because we can't see reality because of the conditioned extended self. But there has to ultimately be, it seems to me, there ultimately has to be that core being that you settle back to yourself, which would be the Atman, which about 8 lectures ago you said didn't exist.
I admire your memory.
It's a comment. I just don't see how to reconcile them. I didn't see 8 lectures ago how to be here, and now that I'm here, I see how to get back 8 lectures ago. And I guess the reason...
Did I speak to different things?
No, I think...
Contradicting things?
It's just I think there's a philosophical incompatibility. You've been very consistent. What I've been trying to do is sort out my lack of ability to arrive at the same consistency. And that's not your fault. I'm
sorry.
I guess when we get to the middle way, that in reality what we're doing is attempting to settle back on self and to arrive, I don't think you'll like this, but I think what you're trying to do is arrive at an Atman position. But you can't do it through thought.
That's why we need to practice. We need
Yes,
to do things.
Yes.
using our body and mind. Yeah. So philosophical or conceptual thinking cannot reach the reality or truth. That is what Buddha taught. In my understanding, that is what Buddha and Nagarjuna taught. So stop thinking or letting go of thought and see and do things. I think is what our practice is about. But we cannot live without thinking, so somehow we have to use our thinking without three poisonous mind.
Without what?
Three poisonous mind. Well, I'm sorry, but I cannot.
Actually,
I cannot give
happier than I have been for a long time.
I understand.
Reconciling.
Please.
There's no absolute being and no absolute non-being that we can rest in as permanent. And then between the two is, as I remember, shunya, emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like even though there's not an absolute non-being nor an absolute being, perhaps there's, in terms of the political functioning in the world, there's a relative, or else there wouldn't be the Eightfold Path. There's a relative non-being and relative being. And it seems like to access the that which doesn't change, that moves through those things, we need to go to emptiness. And that's our practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Well, another point of Nagarjuna's teaching is true truth. True truth means absolute truth, that is beyond thinking. We can't grasp anyway using word and concept. But we also need a conventional truth or relative truth. That is how we understand this reality using words and concept. Without, conventional, what Nagarjuna said is, without conventional truth, we cannot reach that absolute truth. That means we have to use our thinking to approach to the absolute truth. And yet we need to understand our thinking cannot be the absolute truth. If we understand that, then our thinking is only tool we can use. Even to say absolute truth is words and concept. And it is relative with relative truth. So it's still within the domain of our thinking. So in order to really see or experience absolute truth beyond thinking is just sitting.
Dropping everything.
Without thinking. Please.
Can that understanding, can that direct experience be transmitted without language?
I think that is what Zen masters has been saying. There's a direct heart-to-heart transmission. But this is not something we can really transmit like something. But because we are living the same reality, so if we practice the same practice, then that reality is transmitted. So I didn't receive anything from my teacher. But somehow by studying his teaching and practice what he practiced, then somehow, this Dharma is transmitted from my teacher to me, I hope. And that is how, the Dharma has been transmitted from the time of Buddha.
There's an interesting phrase in English that you've used a couple of times, which is that something does not arise. Like the thought of permanence does not arise, or the thought of impermanence does not arise. And it's a little to me, and so if it doesn't arise, then there's no need to go down that path of this thought or that thought. It reminds me of hunger arising. If hunger does not arise, then there's no need to feed, or there's no need to eat. So in a similar way, it seems to me that when there's a sense of practice, that when there's the direct experience of reality, then those thoughts don't have to come up to explain what's happening. And in that way, I'm not, or a person isn't going down the wrong path of saying, well, it has to be this, or it could only be that. But that's a place of, well, from my experience, that's a place of non-thought.
Non-thought, yeah, direct experience without interruption of our thinking is one of, in Zen tradition, this is one of the expression of this reality. But if we cling to that side, then it's really difficult to live in a conventional world.
Yeah. So part of the reason that I'm intrigued with this is because a few lectures ago you used the phrase that what we can do. No, it's not about making an effort towards a certain goal and achieving a certain result, but to make an effort towards manifesting the true self.
Yeah.
What does that
mean? I think true self is, when I use, or Okumura Roshi used the word true self, that is life. So and when he used the word karmic self, that is the product of our thinking. From our experiences, that is our karma, we create certain idea who I am. That is thought production. And thinking and the product of thinking is a part of our life. But our life is not cannot be part of our thinking. So life is larger than our thinking. But we often too much emphasis on thinking, and we even think our thinking is the owner of this body and mind, our life. And according to Okumura Roshi, that is a basic distortion about our understanding of our life. So when we let go of thought, we turn it around. So we see that thinking is a part of our life, but life cannot be a part of our thinking.
So what I don't understand is the effort to manifesting the true self, because it seems to me the true self is already present. There doesn't need to be effort to manifest it. It's a little bit like telling me to make an effort to stay on the ground. Gravity does that.
Yeah, that is what I meant. We need to make effort to, even though we are always living the true self, there's no such fake self. But somehow, or more often, we think, what we think is the self. And I try to control the five skandhas. Five skandhas mean our body and mind. That is distorted view. So our effort is to turn it over and make it normal. Make it normal or natural. Natural.
Okay, yeah.
That is thinking is a part of our life. So we don't need to kill our thinking, and yet thinking is fiction. And yet we are deceived by the fiction as truth. That's why we need effort not to be deceived by our thinking. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I think that is our effort. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.